try and avoid a repetition of some of the things that we all know about, the causes of the situations we're in, and maybe try to focus on other new areas that can generate interest for investors. In as far as the financial situation is concerned in Papua New Guinea. First of all, again, thank you for Business Advantage for requesting or inviting me to attend again. In my presentation, I will briefly restate a few key issues and challenges that we face in Papua New Guinea that has partly resulted in the state of the economy that we have experienced over the last 4 or 5 years, and in particular in the foreign exchange market. This should then set the stage for a way forward with an economic agenda for the government, and of course acknowledging the government's direction in setting the way forward in prioritizing some of the very important sectors that can generate or broaden the economic base of Papua New Guinea. This goes to also as well as setting the parameters and targets for the next 5 years. Now let me restate the economy, the state of the economy, which by historical terms have been a major structural change for a long time. In the years since the commencement of the construction of the PNG Lng Project in 2010 and leading to production in 2014, the economy of Papua New Guinea went through a huge structural change. This change is reflected in, firstly, during the construction stage and the first 2 years of production from May 2014 to the end of first year of full production in 2015, economic growth as measured by the growth in GDP was very high, on average 10% per annum and above. This changed the structure of the Papua New Guinea economy from a low-income developing country to a medium-income developing country. The second point is that the exceptionally high growth of the economy and combined with a very large increase in exports resulted in a huge current account surplus in the balance of payments. Now, I'll dwell a bit more on this later, but there is a big gap here in terms of showing one thing in terms of the current account surplus, but has not translated into physical, real foreign exchange inflows. Thus, we face this issue of imbalance in the foreign exchange market. Now, some of the issues to understand the background of all this, let's set the pace in terms of some of the structural issues we face in Papua New Guinea. First of all, the high imports of food. Despite the significant growth rate of the economy and the current account surplus, our imports of food products remain very high. The surplus in the current account did not translate, as I said, to increased revenue for government and foreign exchange inflows. And we know the reasons. I'm particular about food imports because it constitutes the highest demand for foreign exchange, which is not matched by any foreign exchange revenue from food exports. This is an area of great potential for investment, given the land mass and the suitable land conditions we have, and we all know about that, which can contribute to replacement of food imports and exports of the surpluses. There are positive signs of large-scale investments in food production already happening, like in rice, slowly in rice and vegetables, and more investments in these areas are encouraged. The second issue we face is in terms of consumer behavior. We know it will take a long time to change consumption behavior of our population, but some change need to happen to move away from high consumption of imported food to locally produced food products. I guess this is one consequence of the structural change in the economy from being a low income to a middle income developing country, which I mentioned earlier. During the last 4 to 5 years, this, again, credible changes or structural changes also, or adjustment you may call, done by the private sector. Again, for the consumers, I mentioned already the behavior on consumption, which has not really drastically changed, but for private sector in the operations, there's some positive adjustment over the course of the last few years. Those positive adjustments undertaken by companies to navigate their operations out of the foreign exchange situation were notable during the past few years. And the examples include the diversion to purchase local products or inputs into production. And secondly, some companies close off certain operations or businesses, deferring new investments or capital works, and of course, some went to the extent of borrowing in foreign currency to meet their foreign exchange requirements. The next point is, despite all this, the biggest problem remains the narrow export base of our non-mineral export sector, or non-mineral sector. Given a narrow export base of non-mineral export sector and the reliance on mineral projects and exports, the country has not reached a point of being resilient to various shocks, both internal and external. The recent and past declines in oil and mineral prices have greatly affected both the government budget and, of course, the foreign exchange market. If we had a much more broader non-mineral export sector in place to provide alternative source and sustain both the government revenue and foreign exchange market, the economic growth that we have had over the last few years would have been more sustained. Now, talking about all this past, what about the future? The future prospects of the economy. Firstly, always there is a short-term and, of course, medium and long-term. Let me look at the short-term, which is the current situation we expect to continue into 2018. The story about the short-term prospects is often blurred by a lot of different views and comments. But as long as we have the same constraints and issues which I mentioned we currently face and don't try to address them, the short-term problems can potentially evolve into longer-term issues and strain future positive prospects. On a positive front, the government has continuously acted to address some of the shortcomings through various ways, such as supplementary budgets, some legislative changes, having a consistent set of policies, the inclusion of agriculture and tourism sector developments as part of the government's priorities. And I will dwell on those two areas in my next point. And of course, we know they introduced a measures in the 100-day plan, which is will be interesting to see and hear about soon. Overall, the short-term situation, as I said, is expected to continue in 2018. And Papua New Guinea has somewhat shown some resilience in withstanding the slow growth in the economy. So such forum like this to inform existing and potential investors and, of course, provide some factual information to external analysts and commentators on the economic situation in the country and how they are being managed is crucial and important. Now, what is the medium to long-term prospects? Of course, this is a consistent story, very positive. The story about the medium to long-term prospects of the Papua New Guinea economy is a consistent one. From the government and views of all sectors within the country, businesses, to international financial institutions, donors, international lenders, and of course the rating agencies, the positive prospects of the economy remains. Triggers for this view are many, and they include the developments of the pipeline, mineral and gas projects, the diversification of the economy slowly taking place, and of course the benefits of the past government priority areas of education, health, infrastructure, and law and order. The benefits from these priority development areas takes time to be realized. Now, it's important also, as I mentioned, from the LNG, to have some insights into the benefits from the LNG project. Again, not necessarily for government, the benefits going to government and, of course, in the foreign exchange market, but looking at it from the landowners and those people involved, or the owners of the gas. The population in the provinces where the gas is extracted from Hela and Southern Islands, and the ones through which the pipeline is passing and processing is done, will benefit from the development levies and royalties paid. Although not much have been seen yet, but they will also benefit from the dividend paid on the 2.25% held by MRDC for the landowners. They will also benefit from the 4.27% equity that they are entitled to get from the holdings, shares held by Kumul Petroleum Holdings, and of course the rest of the economy hopefully will benefit from the dividend paid on the 12.53%, again held by KPHL, which is paid annually, even at the very low prices that prevail as of 2015. Now, once a period of accelerated depreciation will be exhausted, which, the numbers, the dates keep on still a guesstimate at this stage, estimated to be around 2021, 2022. The project will commence paying taxes, which the government will use to build up the balances in the proposed sovereign wealth fund, and its development expenditures, and of course spread the benefits through the budget to the rest of the nation. Now, given the situation, again, planning for the future is important, given the scenario now that we say the future is medium to long term is positive. Policy-wise, we have to be absolute in the way we want to steer the economy moving forward. The question that we policymakers have been deliberating on is, what is the potential of the steady state growth of the Papua New Guinea economy? Again, excluding the mining and petroleum, which includes gas also. Excluding those sectors, what is the kind of steady state of the economy, growth rate of the economy that we want to achieve over the long term? This question is relevant to address the challenge of ensuring we reach a point of economic development where the economy can be able to sustain itself and be resilient to various shocks, both internal and external. We did some work on it, following some detailed comparative analysis with other similar countries. We concluded that this steady state growth rate of the economy would be around 6 to 7%. Now let me try to point out what can and should be done to achieve the steady state rate of growth of Papua New Guinea. Now, in 2012, the government committed to priority areas of free education, health, or free basic health services, improving law and order, and infrastructure development. These priority areas, or these priorities, have to be continued with some refocus into high-impact, efficient activities. In 2017, the government should now add on, firstly, the development of major agriculture projects to achieve self-sufficiency in food production, import replacement, and export of some of these agricultural products. And secondly, to pursue the development of tourism ministry. And Andrew, good to show first hints of the beautiful scenario of guest resort in Papua New Guinea. As I already mentioned, it's positive that the government has already targeted these areas as its next priorities. I will elaborate on this here. Now, firstly, working towards those two objectives will result in a continuous, non-interrupted growth of the economy in the long term, as its steady state growth potential of 6 to 7% that I mentioned. The mineral and petroleum developments will be the icing on the cake that will top it up during the periods of construction and initial years of production. It will also result in improvement in the standard of living of our 80% of the population living in rural areas, because they will be involved in these particular two sectors directly. The objective should specify very specific on some of the areas in agriculture for those import replacement or exports. Firstly, the replacement of rice imports with domestic production, replacement of soya bean imports with domestic production, replacement of stock feed imports with, again, domestic production also. And of course, replacement of other grain imports. We import a lot of grain, and of course, other grain imports include wheat, sorghum maize, again, with replacement with domestic production. In addition, the many other agricultural products should also be tested and introduced as part of diversification in the sector. Even the existing agricultural products like coffee and cocoa should be restructured and managed differently under different models. These activities can be achieved, our objectives can be achieved through deliberate actions, committed investments, landowner and local equity participation, and others. But two important success factors are the use of modern technology and new innovations in various stages of production, and secondly, the type of model to be used. The model here refers to either you have a nuclear state type or plantation type model. Different experiences have been tested on each of them. The diversification and import replacement in agriculture and food subsectors will result in many thousands of millions of US dollar production for import replacement, open the potential for exporting of agricultural products on a large scale to maintain to the main importing countries in Pacific and Asia region. In the tourism industry, Papua New Guinea should concentrate its efforts and investment in the niche market of diving, surfing, whitewater rafting, trekking, bird and wildlife animal watching, and the many attractions of its cultural, traditional, and anthropological diversity that it is offering in the country. The competition on mass tourism, seaside sunbathers, resort visitors, and gambling in the region is very high from our close neighbors like Australia and Fiji, and it will be difficult to match their prices and the attractions they offer to those sectors of visitors. In all this diversification process, I have no doubt that there will be room for many small to medium-sized enterprises and entrepreneurs emerging in both in the agriculture and the tourism sectors and some other sectors like light or small industrial manufacturing. This is where the central bank's efforts to develop an efficient countrywide payment system and financial inclusion is important in facilitating these developments. The operation of the RTGS, or we call it Kina Automated Transfer System, is complete. The basic service the system provides to the government, banks, and financial institutions is operational, including banking services system. We continue to move to the next level to implement the retail economic payments system, which will allow payments to any account at any other connected institution using a card, mobile phone, or line payments or other electronic medium. The challenge to bring financial services to our rural people remains. We continue to explore innovative ways and products to assist in this journey. Such innovations include recently we ventured into blockchain technology to assess and understand and explore how it can benefit its use and the implications of it as another tool to drive financial inclusion in the country.